Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Warrant Officer Liz Crean. This evening, we warmly welcome the family of Private Hugh Stitt Joseph Whyte Salmon, whose story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge Admiral Sir Tony Radican, Chief of the Defence Staff, United Kingdom, accompanied by Vice Admiral David Johnston, representing the Chief of the Defence Force Australia, and the accompanying delegation. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Please be seated if you can do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Hugh Stitt Joseph Whyte Salmon. Hugh Salmon was born on the 23rd of September 1893 in Brewarrina, New South Wales. Known as Hughie, he was the only son of local riverboat operator Francis Salmon and his wife Alice. When Hugh was a baby, his mother passed away, leaving his father to raise him. He grew up in the nearby town of Burke and attended the local public school. As a child, he was a keen member of the Boy Scouts and the Cadets and often won prizes for shooting in local competitions. On completion of his schooling, Hugh joined the local rowing team and began studying to become a bookkeeper. He later became engaged to a young woman from Junee named Alexa Cameron. He was working as a clerk in the Burke Post Office at the outbreak of the First World War in 1914. Hugh Salmon tried to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force several times, but was rejected on multiple occasions owing to defective eyesight. It was not until October of 1916, with the rising casualty rates at the front, that he was accepted for active service. He was assigned to reinforcements of the 1st Battalion and began a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for the Western Front in early November 1916, sailing from Sydney on board the troop ship Port Nicholson. Private Salmon arrived in England on the 10th of January 1917 and proceeded to camp to continue training. In early May that year, he embarked for France and joined his comrades in the aftermath of his unit's disastrous attack at Bullecourt. After spending just under a month in the front lines, Salmon became ill and was sent away for treatment. Owing to recurring illnesses, he spent several months alternating between brief service in the front lines as well as multiple stints in hospital. Around his 25th birthday, he took part in his first major battle at Menin Road near Ypres in mid-September. Under the cover of British artillery, the attack was a major success, but it came at a cost of more than 5,000 casualties between the 1st and 2nd Divisions. In early October, Salmon's unit was involved in another major attack as Allied units attempted to capture Brunsinda Ridge. The attack was largely successful, but cost Australian units a further 6,500 casualties. 2 days after the attack at Brunsinda, Private Salmon again found himself in hospital behind the lines. Suffering from several skin conditions, he did not rejoin his unit until December, when the bulk of the major offensives at Ypres salient were over. He spent the weeks which followed engaged in routine trench maintenance and training exercises throughout the cold winter and into the new year. The 1st Battalion spent early January on duty in the front lines around Whitchate in Belgium, often coming under heavy fire from the enemy lines. On the 19th of January, Salmon was amongst a group of men sent out into no man's land on a routine patrol. Not far from their lines, they discovered 2 enemy pillboxes, which they believed to be abandoned. As they approached, however, they came under fire from enemy machine guns, which pinned down their commanding officer and forced them to pull back. Salmon and his comrades eventually made it back to their lines, only to come under heavy shell fire the following morning. Salmon and 3 others were wounded. Suffering from a broken leg and multiple shrapnel wounds, Salmon was rushed to a casualty clearing station behind the lines. His condition worsened and he died of his wounds the following morning on the 21st of January 1918. A few weeks later, the Western Herald newspaper reported his death. Hughie was very well known in Bourke, where he practically lived his life until he enlisted. He was a quiet, unassuming, manly little fellow who, with the exception of his father who lives in Wentworth, was practically alone in the world as far as relations are concerned. He will be ever remembered by the people of Bourke as a lad who was always courageous and genuine. Today, Private Hugh Salmon's remains lie buried at the Trois Abras Military Cemetery in France, among more than 1,500 other First World War graves. He was 25 years old. Hugh Salmon's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Hugh Stitt Joseph Whyte Salmon, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.